Earlier this week, Zack Polanski announced that he is running to be the Green Party leader. A pretty big news story to start off the week. It's been 3 days, and he's already featured in the Jewish Chronicle twice. Green leadership candidate denies that Labour was rife with anti-Semitism under Corbyn. Addressing the issue on Navarra's YouTube channel, Polanski said Jeremy Corbyn at the time was talking about pockets of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. He went on to say that although Corbyn hadn't handled the issue perfectly, it was not helpful for me to assume that the Labour Party was rife with anti-Semitism when we now know that blatantly was not true. Polanski also said that his experience of attacks from often the Jewish Chronicle and other so-called mainstream Jewish organisations meant that he had a new appreciation for what Jeremy Corbyn was dealing with at the time. Now, Polanski didn't waste any time and he clapped straight back. 2 days into a leadership campaign, and the Jewish Chronicle have written 2 articles about me. See you again tomorrow, lads. I mean, you love to see it. Now, Zack in that tweet talked about this being the second article about him, so I decided to find the first one, which I did, and the last paragraph I thought was pretty interesting. During last year's general election campaign, after the JC had revealed extreme anti-Israel social media activity by Green candidates who were later dropped, Polanski denied that the party vetting had a problem and said any suggestion that it had a problem with anti-Semitic candidates would be a huge overstretch. A Green Party local councillor who was elected to lead City Council last May celebrated his win by shouting Allahu Akbar. Now, why would they tag that bit about the councillor at the end there? I mean, he said Allahu Akbar. It literally means God is great, right? Seemingly, the suggestion here is expressing your Islamic faith is anti-Israel. Now, the segment in Navarra was in reference to a tweet Polanski made years back criticising Jeremy Corbyn, to which was put to him by Michael Walker. I'm a pro-European Jew. It's increasingly clear that 2 reasons I couldn't vote for Labour under Jeremy Corbyn. And I think it was fair that that was brought up to Zack by Michael. Helena, listening to Zack's answer, saying he has a new appreciation for Corbyn, do you think that was a good answer? Did you believe him?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought that it was well put, that especially in 2018, when the media sphere broadly had all just accepted prima facie, it was received wisdom that there was anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. Jeremy Corbyn himself was a terrorist sympathiser, and that he didn't take a strong enough whip hand with regards to anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. If you were a casual observer at the time, or even if you were somebody who was at least interested in politics to keep track of things without knowing all the nitty-gritty ins and outs of what's happening on a granular level in the Labour Party, especially if you're a Jewish person and you are rightly going to be alert to potential anti-Semitism wherever it may be, because that's something that directly affects you, I think it would be very easy to get caught up in the media narrative on this. I think there are plenty of good, well-meaning people, regardless of background, at the time, who just continually heard things such as Labour is anti-Semitic under Jeremy Corbyn, and would have just believed it because, why would the press lie? Of course, that is something that over time we've become a lot more appreciative of, and says why we need a Leveson too. But I think I have plenty of sympathy with Zack for saying, well, this is what we were told at the time, but now that I've looked into it, I feel like, and since I've been on the other end of it, I've had much greater appreciation. I think this also goes a lot further than just people like Zack Polanski as well. I think there are probably quite a lot of people in this country, they may not have a positive view of Jeremy Corbyn nowadays anyway, but specifically on his position over Israel-Palestine and the media's smearing of him as being anti-Semitic because of those positions, in the wake of October the 7th, in the wake of Al-Aqsa flood, in the wake of what's happened since Israel has invaded, genocided, and attempted to annex the Gaza Strip, and all the things that people have seen on their phones, on their cameras, all of the knowledge that they have now gained about Israel because it's been clear for the world to see. You just have to hit translate tweet on Twitter to know what Israelis say about Palestinians when they think people aren't watching. They now have a better appreciation of what Jeremy Corbyn stood for. The Israel-Palestine issue was a niche opinion, a niche cause in 2017, 2019. But in 2025, everyone in the country has an opinion, and more people than ever realise the reality of Zionism, the reality of what Israel does. And I'm not spoken to Zack to confirm that this is exactly what he thinks, but I think probably his opinion of Israel has changed a lot, especially over the last 5 years, and certainly since Al Aqsa flood in 2023. So for him to say, I got it wrong, I took a broader opinion that was told to me, but now I've looked into it further, I can understand the nuances of the position, is something that is broadly shared amongst a lot of different people now they've seen Israel for what it is. So I fully take on board what he said, and I think that this is the best answer that he could have given to try and allay concerns over the kind of politician and the kind of politics he represented in 2018 and how different that is now. I mean, the guy goes to like Bundist meetings with, there was the Jewish Socialist Association, whatever it's called. I forget the exact name. Like, you don't go to these things unless you have a genuine, sincere belief in the causes of those groups. And I fully support the position that he's taken in the wake of these attacks on him for being a pro-Palestinian Jewish person who's running to be a party leader, and the comments that he's made previously about other people from that position.
Yeah, and look, I've this has come out probably a handful of times over the last year or so, and I've said, look, at the end of the day, he's also a politician. He's a Green Party politician. Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party. He was deputy leader, or at least involved in the Green Party. It's a kind of a factional thing as well. So he doesn't, and this is not excusing him, but he doesn't have an incentive like maybe me or you did when we really backed Jeremy Corbyn to look at the fine details and see this is what the factional wars were happening inside the Labour Party. This is how it's weaponized. That's one possible explanation. Another one is, I suppose being Jewish as well, hearing the media about it. I think it's possible. I think it's even likely that people are going to find Jeremy Corbyn's leadership skeptical because of the noise of it. I think it was quite. I think it was very. He showed humility actually, because if you haven't seen, I'm sure you've seen it, but those watching, if you haven't seen the interview at Novara Media, go watch it, because in that bit, I think Michael asks him two questions. One about that one, but then something about Brexit, right? But Zack Polanski goes, "I want to address this question head on," so he didn't try and avoid it. So look, I personally believe him, but also, we don't have to. I think one of the mistakes that we had probably after Jeremy Corbyn was looking at one person and think we're going to ride all on this one guy, right? We can look at Zack Polanski and think, look, at the end of the day, the policies are what matters. We don't need to, inundate ourselves with this man. We can just say, this is a man at a particular time, potentially becoming a leader of a particular party. We care about the policies and the vision. We don't need to completely like the guy, although I have a lot of respect for him. We of course knew, obviously the JC attacked him twice, even the Guardian sort of attacked him. We knew these kind of articles were going to happen. I wouldn't say they're full-on attacks yet, but I did like Zack's sarcastic jab at the JC. Do you think Zack does actually have what it takes to take on these inevitable attacks and be the aggressive populist leader that we need?
Time will only tell, but it's a good start. It's a good start to go to these people, and rather than try and placate them, rather than try and take their cynical attacks as if they're in any way sincere, or as if they have any basis to them, and try and repudiate them on the grounds of their terrain that they want to fight on. No, you should dismiss these people. Dismiss these people out of hand. These people are partisan hacks. I do not need to care about whatever these people's opinions are. But notice why they're doing these things. It's because they're scared of me. They could attack me on the foundational principles of the things that I believe, but instead they're going with, I made a mistake one time when I was a hypnotherapist, and I take a position on Israel that is different from the received wisdom of what Jewish people in this country are supposed to believe. When, of course, actually the support for what's happening in Israel, Zionism more broadly, the support for is dropping amongst the Jewish community in this UK over time, and indeed support for the actions of Israel, specifically within the context of what's happened since Al Aqsa flood. That specifically, that doesn't really have much support at all. Maybe they support Israel, but they don't support what's the actions of the Israeli government right now, the genocide they don't support. So the idea that he should take these attacks from these institutions in good faith, and he's not accepting these things as good faith. He's already dismissing them as bad faith out of hand, and that's the absolute correct strategy. That's what Nigel Farage does when everyone tries to say, "Well, you can't be critical of immigration without being racist, and he goes, "Come on, like, these attacks are childish. Debate me on the substance of the policy or the substance of the things that I believe." Right? And whilst you may have concerns that Reform UK voters or Reform UK members or whatever might have anti-immigration positions that are based in racism, that's not a way of attacking the things that he says. It's a useless strategy of being able to take on what he believes. And what's interesting too is the dismissal of the claims that the Green Party has an anti-Semitism problem because people were removed as candidates because of things they said on social media. And I remember covering the things that people said. I think there was like one comment that you probably said was anti-Semitic, right? That's one person out of 650, who cares? But on top of this, a lot of the other ones were just support for the Palestinian cause. Because we know what like ultra Zionists believe about the Palestinian cause. Remember Melanie Phillips saying that anyone who supports the Palestinian cause is engaging in anti-Semitism? That's what a lot of ultra Zionists genuinely believe, and that's where a lot of these critiques, in my mind, come from. It is this: well, you support the Palestinians, therefore you must be anti-Semitic, for example, and therefore a Jew who takes that position is someone you can instantly attack. In terms of Zach Polanski, but in terms of Green Party members, like Zach's like, no, dismiss this out of hand. No, these people just are pro-Palestinian. We had people saying pro-Palestinian things on Twitter. I don't care. And quite frankly, good. I'm glad that he's taking this line. There's no reason to treat these people with anything other than disdain when all they do is do politically motivated attack pieces on you. And again, someone on Twitter made another really good point here, which was that the instant response he goes, "Where's your critique of Peter Mandelson?" Especially when it's The Guardian,
and
Pippa
it
Carrera,
shut her
right?
up completely.
Literally, like, where's your critique, not just of Peter Mandelson's company that he keeps, but in terms of what he's been doing in terms of his business relationships since he's been out of Parliament, right? These people are not squeaky clean. And Aaron Bastani made this point too. If you really want to attack Labour, you've got to go for the jugular, expose them for what they are, talk about their relationships with the TBI and Labour together openly. This is the name Morgan McSweeney is very, very rarely talked about in mainstream media in the way that Dominic Cummings was. Go for the jugular. Get these people to actually discuss just the ways in which the Labour Party work and say, no, let's go on the offensive, right? Turn this back round on these media hacks for being partisan. I think the way he's handled it so far, if that's showing how things are going to be in the months and years to come, then he has my full support.
And I think he will. And if he doesn't, I hope there's advisors around him that tell him to do that. I mean, I remember Ash Sarkar, I remember it was yesterday, Ash Sarkar said, you kind of need to be a shark. You need to go looking for it. And I think part of the problem the left had, part of the problem that Jeremy Corbyn had, was that he was always on a defensive position. Sometimes he could evade the attacks well, but I suppose he was almost waiting for it to happen. You really got to be aggressive and go for it. I think the way that Zack handles himself seems to be quite promising. I mean, I saw a clip from the BBC maybe a year or two ago, and he was asked about these candidate selections. And he did what I call the Bernie Sanders approach, which is he kind of dealt with it at hand and then went immediately to income and wealth inequality, corporations, billionaires, and taxes. It's excellent. And I think he needs to do that on every issue. I know this is going to be a completely different topic, so we don't need to hash out now, but there's been some people on the left saying, does he need to capitulate on social issues to be popular? My view is he doesn't need to capitulate, but he needs to do everything by class. Right? He gets asked about, what do you think about this culture thing? And he'll go, I don't think it's that important. Anyway, the corporations, the billionaires, keep it on message. And I think he can do the same with these attacks. And I think the way he disparaged the JC was fantastic, and Pippa Creer, by saying, what about Epstein? Or sorry, Peter Mandelson. Freudian slip. Was really good.
But I would say is I think you're absolutely right, because that's been the Sanders strategy for a very, very long time. It's a really great clip of him from the 2000s during the Bush era, talking about how people use cultural issues to divide. And he always, what Sanders always does is clearly state his own position and say, I believe no matter what gender you are, no matter what your background is, no matter what your race or who you love or who you choose to spend your life with, right? I respect you regardless, and that is my position. But the reason we're having these discussions is because they don't want you to talk about the real issues. It's why I think that I really want to discuss. I really want to be on like mainstream media and be able to ask these questions like, well, you're transgender. What's your opinion on this issue? I'm like, I'm not here to discuss this. You want me to talk about what a woman is at a time when people can't feed their fucking kids. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this at all. It's been clear for the way in which social conventions work for ages that trans people act in the way that they do, and we don't need to change this at all just because the Supreme Court said something. But that's completely by the by, because it's been an issue that's massively overhyped in the media to high heavens, when we really need to have an actual talk about the issues affecting real people in this country, not the hobby horses of bored middle class journalists.
Yeah, because obviously the media want to look. I think it's very much understood that the left, when it comes to class issues and economic issues, is we are at our strong point there. It's a unifying message, and the right constantly wants to talk about these wedge issues. And I do think it's a mistake to capitulate on them, though, because what you do there is obviously you piss off your own base. I also think it's immoral, but you actually don't pivot away from the conversation. So if Wes Streeton says, it was a mistake that trans women are women and trans men are men, he hasn't actually diverted the conversation. He's continuing that conversation, but he's just saying, I agree with you. I hope that Zack is going to do this, and I think Bernie Sanders is one of the best speakers we've had. He was so inspirational in 2015, 2016, was that he kept it on message. It almost got annoying watching him, but you want to be like that. Even if people go, Zack's a bit annoying because he keeps saying the same thing, it's wedged in your brain, though. The problem is, that your bills are going up is not because of inflation. It's greedflation. It's because the oil barons are making record profits. The billionaires are paying no taxes. Your public services are being siphoned, destroyed because of private contracts. I think when that message gets in, that's the most important thing, especially that Zack Polanski isn't trying to be prime minister. He's only trying to win more seats. So I think he actually has a bit more leverage. When you're trying to be prime minister, there's a kind of a big coalition build, and you do kind of have to be a little bit careful. I think Zack can be even more aggressive in where he is, because he's still kind of on the sideline.
I think that's right, because there's a Politics Joe clip that's been going viral, and Ed Campbell made a very reasonable point of saying, well, we're kind of in a post-woke world now, and can you really be politically all-encompassing if you're still using kind of jargony social justice rhetoric, talking about things like social justice, economic justice, right? And I think maybe there is some credence to that. But you look at the kind of way the polls are going at the moment. If all your plan is as a Green Party is to peel off votes from Labour, get Greens from 10 to 15, 16, 17%, get them in the running for the kind of seats that we're seeing from the Liberal Democrats, for example, at the moment, or even, to be honest, if you wanted to get a quarter of the electorate and be fighting amongst the other parties at the top of where people are polling, what 3/4 of the public can hate what you say. 3/4 of the public can think that this is utter woke nonsense for you saying things like social justice. Who cares? You've got the 25% of the electorate that you need to appeal to, which is all you need to be politically relevant right now. And I think that given that social justice rhetoric kind of prima facie is just gone out of the political lexicon, it's been abandoned by every single major party. Even the Liberal Democrats kind of shy away from it. They've been pretty pants on a bunch of stuff like migration and on trans issues, and they've been trying to kind of tiptoe around the edges on this one. The Green Party can really fill the hole of saying, well, hang on a minute. There are loads of people out here who do care about social justice issues. Jeremy Corbyn, in the very famous interview with Jeremy Paxman in the 2017 election, went out of his way to say, I am fighting this election on social justice. Got him 40% of the votes, right? Not that I'm saying everyone was enamored by the rhetoric, right? But it's clearly not so off-putting that you can't do well in an election. It's not totally electorally carcinogenic that it means people won't vote for you if you have incredibly, what's the word I'm looking for? Popular, for example, economic positions,
You also have to realise that this is kind of a five-party race. You're not even trying to get 40%. I mean, 25% can get you top of the polls. Now, it's not ideal. I think it just shows how broken first past the post is. But again, I don't think the Green Party needs to be like, right, we need to get 45% of the vote. That's not going to happen.
No.
But they can get 20% in the polls. I think that's possible. And they can get a lot of seats. And we may actually eventually go to PR, because we'll never have a stable government if we keep to first past the post. So, I mean, look at the polls now. Reform on top, but they're on what, 27%? No particular party is actually popular, despite Reform saying we're really popular. I think they're just the least hated party with the opinion polls, but no party is actually extremely popular. So if they can peel off 20%, maybe 25% of the vote, that's really, really significant.
It is, and as well, because even if we stick with first past the post, right, what we have in this country is a thing called, we have electoral balkanization, right? Voter groups are actually pretty concentrated in certain areas of the country by demographic because of things like demographic shift. Age is a really big predictor of whether you vote left wing or right wing in this country. It's why people will look at saying, well, it's whether you have a degree or not. I mean, it's just that people who are younger are more likely to have a degree, and the age is the skewing. in terms of how people vote. In fact, if you take the NRS social grade, pretty terrible measure, but let's just assume that it's okay for now, and you plot ABC1 versus C2DE, and you plot it by age, the lines completely coalesce along each other. They are identical to each other. So class is far less of a predictor of how you vote than it is age, although age is also a class distinction too, but regardless. And because young people have moved into cities, because that's where the jobs are, it's where the universities are, because they've managed to get degrees and they've stuck around in places like Bristol, Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham, Liverpool, London, Nottingham, for example, Sheffield. These urban bastions of left-wing vote, it's not rich metropolitan types, it's mostly just young people. And so if you wanted to get the left-wing populist vote, which really a lot of it is concentrated amongst young people, they were the biggest cohort who voted for Jeremy Corbyn, working age people, like the Greens could substantially win a lot of seats in these metropolitan areas just off the back of people abandoning Labour over a load of different things, whether they be economic, social, or geopolitical. So even if you don't get rid of first past votes, even if you keep the pretty warped electoral system, getting 20% of the vote for the Greens, getting broadly ahead of where Labour are, or similar to where Labour are in terms of raw vote share, those will be concentrated specifically in seats that are winnable for the Greens already, and could translate into enough seats that they are going to be prime coalition partners for Liberal Democrats, Scottish National Party, a potential Labour Party, where we have this big fractured electorate in a theoretical election under first past the post as well. So you don't need electoral reform for this appeal to a certain demographic to be useful electorally under first past the post.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.